Ladies and gentlemen, if I could get your attention just for a minute, I'm Bill Underwood, I'm the show publicist, and I'm just so proud to introduce our speaker for today, the longtime curator of the Smithsonian's Renwick Gallery. Please welcome Mr. Micheal Monroe.
Welcome to the world of crafts. I'm going to take you on a tour of the White House, showing the craft collection that I put together for Mr. President and Mrs. Clinton. And this was done in 1993. Now, can you hear me at the back?
Yes.
You can. I'd rather speak like this than use the microphone. So, 1992, President George Bush I, in October of 1992, he's flying in a plane over America back to Washington, D.C. from California. And on the airplane, he signs a proclamation, a presidential proclamation, which says that in 1993, the next year, it's October of 92 at the moment, that America's going to celebrate crafts for that whole year. Now, all of us, or not all of us, most of us in this room remember Earth Day. 1972 Earth Day? Okay. Well, crafts to be celebrated was like Earth Day, but only in 1993. So all across the country, organizations, museums, and so forth were celebrating craft and the importance of craft. 1992, October, he signs it. It goes into effect. November 4th, he loses the election. The Clintons come in. January 20th, 1993, Clinton's in office now. And the Clintons decide to honor the previous President Bush's proclamation. So they move into the White House January 21, and at the beginning of 1993, and I'm there hoping something will happen with crafts, but the Clintons have a little bit more on their mind on January 20th than a craft. So I kept waiting and waiting, and not that I was going to be part of it, I just thought, we've got to really move because the president, the White House wants to do something, we can't wait forever. So in April, I get a phone call to come across the street and meet with the Clintons to see what I could do to help them celebrate in the White House the Year of American Craft for the year of 1993. So curators work on exhibitions for 3 to 5, 6 years before the show even opens. They asked me to put together a show in 6 months. And I said, no, I shouldn't do that. I didn't say no to them because it's very hard when you're standing in front of any president and first lady to say no. There's plenty of examples of that. So I couldn't say no because I knew if I said no, that these artists would never get a chance to be seen in this context, meaning the White House, again. So it was an opportunity that I knew against all my professional judgment that I should not do. But my knees were knocking. They're asking for help. This is my profession. I've been involved for 50 years in it. And I said, okay, I'll do it. So the next day, Mrs. Clinton invited me over to the White House, and we walked through the White House, all the rooms. And I had a photographer that she provided, and I said, take a picture of this room, this coffee table, this set of bookcases, this wall, this place. So that was at about 5:30 in the afternoon. The next day I got all these gorgeous color pictures, and I spread them out all in the floor of my office. And then I got all these books of crafts, and I started putting yellow tags on each of these pages to give the Clintons an idea of what I was thinking about for crafts in the White House. Now you realize the White House is a Greek revival piece of architecture, that all the decorative arts and the furnishings are all from 1700s, 1800s. It's a very traditional place. So here I am working with contemporary crafts, exactly what you see out here at this show, and thinking how am I going to integrate them into a historical setting. Because the White House Historical Association is the organization that provides the money to buy the furniture, provides the money to buy paintings and so forth, and they're a very conservative group of people, taste-wise. in terms of what they believe the White House should have in its decor. And it's usually 18th, 19th century American, French decorative arts, paintings and so forth. So they were very nervous with me coming in there with my contemporary crazy ideas and coming into the White House, because they felt that we were giving credence and importance and certification to the artists, because they could now say that they were a part of the White House. And the White House is always nervous about how somebody's going to use their name, you see. And so the curators at the White House said, this guy, we can't have this guy here. And so Mrs. Clinton said, no. She said, we're going to do this. These are living artists, but we're going to do it. Because in the East Room, they had Ella Fitzgerald singing. They have all sorts of performers who are alive and performing. And so Mrs. Clinton and I had this talk, and I said, this is no different. You know, so tell those curators, you guys are doing it all the time to performing arts. What about the visual arts? So that's how we got it by, and I was able to proceed. So I sent the books over to her. She looked through them, and we met again, and she really liked where I was going. So I was going to try to spread it geographically, age-wise, the 5 media: fiber, clay, glass, wood, and metal, exactly what you see out here. There's no difference that what I did in 1993 than what you see here. And I wanted to pick out pieces that would be representative of the full range of the craft. So then I had to write a letter to ask all these artists for a free piece, because no US government money was spent on this project. And so I wrote the letter for Mrs. Clinton. And in the middle of each paragraph, I wrote the kind of piece I wanted from that specific artist. If you just ask somebody for something, you are on the begging end, and you are not on, you're on the receiving end, and you are not able to control what you're getting, you see? So I wrote the middle paragraph that was inserted to each artist that said, I want a pair of yellow glass vases with black trim, 16 inches high. Because that was my only control factor. Because a lot of artists would go into the bottom of the back room of their studio, find something, dust it off, and give it. And I couldn't, I had to monitor that. And so all the artists gave pieces except 3, and those 3 found donors who bought the piece and then gave it to the White House. So there was no, again, US money spent on this collection. So then 75 pieces were finally selected, and they all came to the White House. It's now December 9th, 1993, just the closing days of the Year of American Craft, and this exhibition opened at the White House. It stayed at the White House for 2 years. And every time, the Renwick Gallery is right across the street from the White House. And so I was right across the street, so I would go over every week to look and see how my babies were doing. And every time I went over, they were in a different place than I put them. So I panicked. I didn't know if they were stolen. I didn't know what was going on. And one piece, there's a doll in the collection, a handmade doll, and it was gone for 2 weeks, and I said, you guys got it, where is the doll? And they found it in Chelsea's bedroom. She was a little girl. And so this was a working collection. And it taught me that if really objects are made well, they can endure a lot. So for 4 years, 6 years while I was still in Washington, the Clintons invited my wife and I over there quite a bit, and that was very nice. And one time we went to a very small dinner party in the Blue Room. And this was very, very small. So my wife and I walk into the Blue Room, and there are only 8 tables in there. And I almost had a heart attack, because on the center of each table was a piece of craft. And some of them had flowers in them. Another had a goldfish in it. And I mean, these are sacred art objects, and I couldn't enjoy the whole thing. I couldn't enjoy it. I don't even know that. And there was another, they had also put candles with dripping lamp. You know, everything you're never supposed to do. But in all that time, nothing ever got broken, which is absolutely amazing. Because they were just moving these things all over the place. Anyway, I have a lot of stories, which if I have time, we can get to later, that are very insightful, funny stories. So, let us roll with this now. It's going to go very fast. At the end, we'll have a chance for you to ask all the questions. So let's take a roll. Now, what's so wonderful about this collection is I'm going to show you the piece by itself, independent, and then I'm going to show you how it looked in situ, in place, okay? Because a lot of people cannot look at an object and imagine it in their own house or in their own environment. So this lecture really helps you do it. And these are one way of living. I know a lot of you live in contemporary homes, as I do, but it doesn't matter. If something's really good, there are ways it will fit into your life, most important. Whether it fits into your decor is not as important. You have to love it first. And if you really love it, it will fit in your life. And so don't pick it out because it has green and blue, and my wallpaper's green and blue. All right? Change the wallpaper, not the piece of art. Okay, so. Dante Marioni, glass blower. Now, the White House is Greek Revival architecture. So I picked the Greek Revival forms. These are two vessels that were used in Greek times, the shape of them. But these are made in contemporary materials, glass. Okay? So they're about this high, and I really like them because of their color, yellows. And notice that the Greeks used clay, so it's very dark and brown and reds and so forth. But I like this Rock'em and Sock'em school bus yellow with the black trim, because I'm trying to get them to move forward in the White House into the 21st century. So I thought these are absolutely perfect, but they're still classical Greek inspired as the architecture of the White House is. So there you can see how they look in situ, in place. This is in the yellow oval room. It's up on the second floor. Not many people get to see it. It is right above the blue room. And this is looking on a windowsill out over the Washington Monument, way in the distance. And the black wrought iron, just behind the yellow pieces, is the Truman Balcony. That's the balustrade for the balcony. And you can see the yellow curtains, the drapery. You can see very much it has a Greek feeling. And so I thought, here we can introduce contemporary modern art into this setting and echo some of the same traditions. Remember, there is nothing new in the world except every 500 years somebody invents something in their particular professional field that really is new. Everything else is an interpretation, for the most part, of something that has gone before it. Now, we do not honor artists who imitate the past. We honor artists who are inspired by that, the past, internalize the past, and then bring it out into a new form of vision. And that's what you'll see here at the show. This is Philip Moulthrop. Philip is from Georgia. I included him because not only is his work great, but his father was Edward Moulthrop. This is Philip Moulthrop. And Philip's son is Andrew Moulthrop. So we have 3 generations of family here who turn wooden molds. And Philip Moulthrop, the father of Edward, turned the largest bowls ever in America. This is his son. Now, his son turned a wooden bowl on a lathe. You all know what a potter's wheel does, goes this way, right, with clay. A wooden bowl is turned on a lathe, which is, you take a tree trunk, this diameter, you slice it like a sausage, you lock that sausage piece of wood onto a lathe, push the button, 2,300 revolutions per minute, and it's spinning like this, and you take a wood gouge. How many of you ever did linoleum cutting when you were little? A little curved tool, and you stick that in there, and out comes all the wood chips flying right out the end of this top up there. Okay? That's how you get the bowl. Then he takes pine tree branches, long ones, and cuts them up just like a sausage. Cucumber, think of a cucumber with all the slices. Okay, now he glues all those slices, cucumber slices that are evergreen branches, all over the exterior of the surface. Then he takes epoxy black glue and he pushes it in between each of the circles. How many of you have ever lived in a house with a tile floor bathroom? You know each tile is separate, and you know what they put in between the ground. So this is like a mosaic only using wood. Okay, now it's filled with this epoxy resin and it's really ugly. So he puts it back on the lathe and he trims all that off. So the result is this beautiful mosaic of pine branch slices wrapped around the tree. Now, as I told you, I was really nervous about blending brand new contemporary work with epoxy glue. Epoxy glue is not around when the United States becomes alive. So I thought, where can I put this that will really link and tell the story about linking our past with our future? So this is the grand staircase that takes you from the front entrance of Pennsylvania Avenue. It takes you upstairs. On this staircase are portraits of presidents. And on this landing, you come up here, just like I'm coming up here, I turn here, and then I go up the second floor to the private quarters of the White House. And at this stair landing is this painting of President Wilson. And here is an Empire piece of furniture with the gilt ormolu and the marble top. And in here is this lighter color wood in which the artist cuts out a pattern and inserts a dark piece of wood right into this eagle shape here. So you see here's French 1700s, and here's modern day America 2003. So you can see how beautifully they work together and how artists are still dealing with the same idea of beautiful materials and beautiful craftsmanship. And this is really a good example of how the new and the old join. Cheryl Williams, these are ceramic bowls that she throws on a wheel and then cuts the edge at the top. And she sprays paint them with glazes with a spray brush, just like cars are painted. And then she lines them all with gold leaf. And so I put this in the entrance hall, the Pennsylvania Avenue entrance of the White House, here, because I thought her bowls really are nice and what? They're cool. Notice everything else there is warm. It's all gold and so forth. So I thought, okay, I'm going to contrast it with these really blue shades of the bowls. And this is a clock by Tomir, 1760, in America. And this is what they call a pier table, a very shallow table. And this comes from France in the 1700s. President Monroe bought a lot of the furnishings that are in the Blue Room and in this entrance hall. But anyway, and you can see the stairway in the back. Anyway, I really liked how these pieces related in the gold and the cool color against the warm setting. This is a man and wife artist that work together, and they work with black and white porcelain. Porcelain can be black, can be almost any color, and white porcelain. And they roll out the clay, and then they put little black specks of clay on that, and then they roll it out and fold it over, roll it out again. 1944, when I was 4 years old, my mother made the marble cake. How many of you know what a marble cake is? All right. So the biggest surprise and what kept me under control at age 4 was the fact that when you sliced open that cake, you got this unbelievable pattern. And that kept me quiet for a few minutes. Anyway, that's the same idea here. So the pattern is on the outside in one way, and it's exactly the reverse on the other side. And so it's a beautiful piece of porcelain. And these two artists have done the exhibitions like the show here today. And many of these artists have traveled around the country doing these shows. So I put it in the library, and I liked how the gold leaf base of this little piece of ceramics, here's a fireplace, and I liked the way it echoed the newspaper in the painting, the realism painting by Thomas Barnett, who was a famous American painter. And you see the black and white patterning in the newspaper, the gold leaf in the frame. And so I was able to introduce this object into that room so that it had a special place of attention, but it did not overwhelm, but it enhanced. Micheal, Cheryl, artists will often take an idea, like a model, with a neck on it, You know, ceramics has a name to it. They have the head, they have the neck, they have the shoulders, they have the body, they have the feet, they have the waist. And so here's an artist that takes one idea and shows you 3 different possibilities for that in this particular piece. And these are about, the tallest one is about 2.5. So I went into another room at the White House, and it's called the Micheal room. And it is a ladies' sitting room, and it has the Biddle family, B-I-D-D-L-E, donated in the early 1930s 1,500 pieces of gilt silver to the White House. So many of these pieces are on display in this room. Again, it's a very warm room, and so I decided I wanted to cool it down again with these 3 bottles. I also had a little fun here, because I kept looking at that painting of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Now keep looking at it, and keep looking at it. Is it possible that she's that tall? So I thought I would play around with that a little bit, with the piece of ceramics, and introduce this really tall bottle to kind of echo. See how it echoes that shape in the painting in the background? Well, I have to have a little humor, and a lot of people know me for my humor. Not all of it's good. However, this is an artist in the state of Washington, and he did this bird jar, and it looks like a big cookie jar or a garbage can, elegant garbage can. But it had a sense of humor to it. I like the ears on the piece. I like the bird on the top. And you know, the blue room at the White House is a room that's filled with eagles and the campus leaves. And so I thought this color combination and this shape would be great in the blue room, which, as you know, is the most famous room in the White House. And so I put it on this table, purchased in 1716 by President James Monroe. I'm waiting to see if anybody's going to ask me if I'm related. So I thought it just added a little bit of levity to the seriousness of this room. And there's eagles in the chair upholstery, there are eagles in the border, there are tree branches, campus leaves up on the chandelier, and just the whole formality of the room. And then suddenly you have this sort of bird cookie jar sitting there. And I just like the kind of playfulness of introducing this into a serious setting. Albert Paley is America's greatest iron worker, one of the most well-known iron workers in the world. And he created these 2 candlesticks. Reminds you of anybody in silhouette? Don Quixote. Yeah. And so I put them in the family dining room at the White House on a console table. And this is a portrait of Edith Roosevelt. And I just liked how these black candlesticks echoed her clothing. Look at the sweep of her black coat, how it comes down. Brings your eye over to these. Look at the oval frame. Then I picked a piece by Ed Moulthrop, the young father, Ed Moulthrop, to put here to echo the kind of composition, the color, and so forth. So when integrating craft, you can, when you put pieces somewhere in your house, move them around, see how you feel about them. See how they relate to what is around them. And you can keep moving pieces, and if you run out of money, just take your piece of craft and move it to another place in the house, and you'll see, oh, I have a new piece. Because what's important is not only the piece itself, but it is the context of what it is surrounded with. I can take a rhinestone from Woolworths, if you know what Woolworths is, and I can take it to New York City and put it in Tiffany's window all by itself, and everybody will say, $1 million diamond. Or I can take $1 million diamond and go to Woolworths and stick it in with the rest. You won't know this. So remember, much is about context. It's about how it's seen within the larger framework, and the White House was that for me. Harvey Milton, he's the man that got contemporary glass blowing going in America. He passed away recently, but in the 1960s, there was little glass blowing going on in America. He got it going up and running again in the state of Wisconsin, University of, and if you go out and see the show, and when you do, you notice how many Wisconsin artists are working in glass, because Harvey Milton left a huge legacy glass. So you'll see about 5 artists in glass in this show. Tell them you know you saw Harvey Littleton in the lecture, and they'll line up. Again in the blue room. And these pieces are about 3 feet high. They're blown on the end of a rod. The rod is 3 feet long. The glass is hot blue glass. And he wraps it around like taffy apple, blue, taffy apple glass, pulls it out, twirls it around, sticks it in another oven with clear glass. Clear glass is the second layer on the outside. And then he takes it and he swings it like Tiger Woods? No, Tiger Woods. Golfing, and he swings this around. And eventually he gets it to go into these positions, and then he has to stop it and let the glass cool down so it freezes into this motion. And it takes a while for it to cool down so it doesn't crack too quick. But anyway, here's 2300 degrees. You can't touch the glass. And here he gets that beautiful, lyrical movement with something that was that hot. And so he's a real master at it. This is his son and his son's wife, the Littletons, John Littleton and Kate Vogel. So they carried on the tradition of their father. Now they take and blow these individual handkerchiefs together as each individual unit, and then they fuse them together while the glass is still hot. Now lots of glass is very shiny and reflective. This was dipped in a bath of acid, and the acid eats away the shiny reflective and leaves it like this. It's like a broken Coca-Cola bottle lands in the beach in Florida. 20 years later, it comes up on the shore. You pick it up, it's smooth, and it's also not shiny anymore. And so this acid gives this feeling. And the idea behind this piece was family, community. So he takes the big bag and adds a child, and a mother, and so forth. So the kind of idea that they were trying to describe was familyness, community, and togetherness through this material. So this I put right here at the entrance, Pennsylvania Avenue entrance to the White House. And I liked all of this Baroque. Look at the carving on this handle, chair handle, and the ornament. And look at the legs on this table, very rococo, Baroque, very curved and so forth. And again, so I thought this piece of sculpture really echoes that idea as we see here. Sonia Bloomdahl, an American glassblower who is very close to Norway in terms of her background in her family. And she's the one that developed a technique called Incalmo, I-N-C-A-L-M-O. So when there are two people who are blowing a piece of glass, one over here, and they come together after this shape from here down, and then from there above. So these two artists are coming at each other, this glass is very hot, and they're going to come together, almost like the reverse of a Siamese twin. But they introduce a clear piece of glass in the middle. And when they come and join, you can see that clear glass ring right there. And so it's a technique of making a larger vessel because you have two different people that come together and glue it. So when this light comes down through here, it hits this, and it magnifies and throws this beautiful glow down around there. Not a lot of artists do this technique, but that is one of the things I wanted to do, was to try to show many different techniques that artists use to express themselves. John Kuhn is actually quite a crazy man, engineer by training, and he is very precision beyond belief. He takes all these little colored pieces of glasses and runs them through a faceting machine. You all know what a facet on a diamond is, all the different facets. Well, he does the same thing with little pieces of glass that are 1/130th of a second in size. Then he takes all these chips of colored glass and glues them together into a cube about this big. Then he takes clear crystal glass, 6 pieces, and glues them on each side of the box. So, the original piece of glass that he glued together with all these little chips is right here. These are all clear pieces of glass, all clear, glued around it. So when the sun hits this, it throws off all these reflections. Now, when I was 21, it was really cool for you when you were driving your car to hang this little sparkling cut crystal in the rear view mirror. You remember those?
Yes.
Well, this is the same idea. And so it's this magnifying glass. And what's interesting, rather than just having a cube that sits on the table, he takes the cube and he cuts off one corner, and then that lifts it up into this much more interesting shape. Plus, it also allows light to come down from under, up and through. So there's a reason in craft, there's a reason an artist does everything, even every little detail. They can tell you exactly why you've done this. So it's not just this sort of free-for-all throwing. It's vision, it's energy, and it's technique all put together to make something that has never been made before in a beautiful way. Ronald Fleming, this is a turned wooden bowl out of a piece of redwood that he found in Oklahoma, all right? Artists who work in wood, and you can ask any of them in this show, none of them will ever go out and cut down a tree. They will use trees that have died or have been taken down. One of the artists has friends in the power company, the light company. So when lightning strikes a tree, the power man's the first guy on the scene. After he does his work, he calls up the artist and says, 6 miles past the 7-Eleven on Route 23, you will find a tree that's just been knocked over by lightning. So the artist would go out and get the tree. This was a redwood tree that burned. So this artist took this tree, it's about this big, cut it into the cucumber slice, it's round, put it on the lathe, it turns, and he makes this bowl. Then he takes it off. Now he takes tools and he carves leaves, L-E-A-V-S, or V-E-S, into the surface of the bowl, and he cuts some of them all the way through. Now look up here, if you can see, these are a little darker up here. The tree caught on fire and it stopped. The fire stopped right about there. So that's why these tips of the bowl are a little darker. So I put this in a very famous room at the White House, the Red Room. This is a room that was used for private meetings, small gatherings of people from about 1854 on. It has everything in the room is in red. It's in the Empire furniture style, Paris. And this is a room that Dolly Madison used. She would invite artists and playwrights and authors and scientists every Wednesday night to the White House, and they'd all get around and sit around and have talks. But I thought this piece looked really beautiful here. Here you can see the burnt tips a little bit easier. And this is a table crafted in 1750 by the French furniture maker Henri. It's a beautiful piece, and you can see how this entire color scheme is a perfect place for this contemporary piece. Trudzinski, everybody always is curious about her name. She is a really inventor doing a technique that really nobody else has done to the extent she has. Okay, you know what a pasta machine is? Everybody know what a pasta machine is? Yeah. Crank out the spaghetti? Well, she has her own pasta machine, but she's not cranking out spaghetti. She is cranking out little hot glass that gets pushed out of the machine in all these different colors. Okay? You see, this piece is made up of light-colored glass rods, black ones, pink, turquoise, yellow, black. These are all little pieces of pasta on a table. All right? Like pickup sticks. How many remember pickup sticks? I do. Okay, so she's got all these colored rods on the table, a steel table. So she starts to pick them up, and she fans them out, layers some on top, this direction, that direction, this direction. So on her table, she has this shape about this big. There's all these colors of spaghetti, but they're glass in different colors. Then she takes a torch and she heats them all up. What happens? All the glass rods start to melt into one solid piece. She puts on her asbestos gloves, picks up this now one sheet, and she has a mold. A mold that is shaped like this, but it is hollow. Now she takes and puts a sheet of flat glass on top of the mold, pretend it's a salad bowl in your house that's empty, you put it on top, and you push down in. And then let it cool, and after it cools, you pop out this. So it looks like an abstract painting with brush strokes. But each of those are a tiny little rod of glass. Artists come up with new ways and techniques to express their ideas. Sid Hunter, MIT, probably 1989. He is studying engineering at MIT, but he always has a hankering for art. So in about that same time, there was a high-rise building being built in Boston, designed by the architect I.M. Pei. And they did some miscalculations with the skyscraper in that when the winds came, it pushed the building a little bit too far, and the top 20 floors, all the glass, flew out of the building, landed on the street, closed off 6 blocks of Boston until they could sweep up the glass. Sid Hunter walks by this and sees all this glass and says, like most artists, says, this can't be thrown out. I can do something with this. I'm going to save this stuff. And so he saves the stuff and he takes a class in glassmaking at the Massachusetts College of Art. So now he's got all this broken glass, architectural glass, just like in your windows, but this stuff is pretty thick. And he says, oh, I'm going to make sculpture out of it. Okay? So he grinds each of these flat sheets of glass into a circle, but with a slant on each piece. You see, here's a slant, a slant, and a slant. Now, he has all these circles spread out, and now he's going to stack them up. But he doesn't want them to touch one another. He wants a spacer bar in between. So if you look in there, you can see a rod of glass, like a long, flattened out piece of glass, inch wide, maybe 8 inches long. And so he glues them, and rather than glue them all in a row, he does them in a spiral. Watch the spiral of the rods going up, and then they switch, going all the way. So you have a spiral pattern. This glass is not purple, so don't think it's purple. And I'll show you why it's not purple. Everybody thinks it's purple. Now this glass is not purple, it's clear glass. Look, right about here, you see? So each of these is a totally clear glass sculpture. But the glue that he uses to glue each piece of glass in the sandwich together is a special product used in the 40s and 50s in the radio industry. And it is a glue that when you put it on and it dries, the light catches the glue and it sends the color out to the edge where it's been cut. You see here? So it's a clear piece of glass until he glues it, and then the purple is just caught by the light and the glue projects out to me. And I like the shadow on the floor, it's quite beautiful. Again, artists are very smart at taking other uses, other materials, and making it their own. And that's what a creative mind does. Whether you are an attorney, a banker, baking cakes in a restaurant, creative people think of new ways to do something old. And they're the ones that break the rules. So there's a little humor here, metalsmithing. This is a teapot, a dunce hat. I like the way it has a kind of very formal, elegant, but there's a sense of humor. You get the feeling of the handle and the spout, the way it comes together. It just has a kind of fun attitude about it, and yet it's very gold and very formal. So I enjoy that play between formality and fun. Zach Oxman, Maryland, a well-known sculptor, who created this piece especially for me. I was very interested in his work, and I said, we need to have a menorah. And so he came up with this Festival of Light, Zach Oxman, cast in bronze. Well, it was one day when I was looking out, having the pictures taken in the White House, I looked out one of the windows and saw the Jefferson Memorial. And you know what the Jefferson Memorial looks like. I don't have to explain it. But I thought, and I remember seeing this piece a couple of years before, and I said, oh, that reminds me of the Jefferson Memorial. So I had that piece gifted to the White House. And this tray here lifts off of here, so you can pass fruit or candy around to people or ask for money and put it back on top. But this so much reminded me of the columns in the architecture of the Jefferson Memorial. Now that bowl up there is about this big around, and so the artist starts with a flat sheet of silver, and he takes a hammer and pounds it right in the middle. And again, and again. And what starts to happen is the bowl starts to come up. Then you have to anneal it, reheat it, turn it over, pound it again. So hundreds of thousands of pounding to get that shape to come up and be very smooth. So there's an enormous amount of patience and technique in everything you will see in this show. A little humor, Mara Superior. She grew up with a mother and a grandmother and a great-grandmother that all did stitchery and little embroidery, as you can see here. And so she was very influenced by growing up with all these home samplers, home sweet home done in the little stitches. And this is a porcelain teapot. It lifts off the base. This almost looks like a tablecloth here. And the little brown spots remind you of cocoa beans. But what I like about the piece is that it's not a straight teapot like this, but it's like this. And it just has a little bit of gesture in it, a little bit of movement that gives it just a touch of humor. Other artists, again, being inventive, this California artist, who goes out into the woods. He found this tree trunk, and this tree and these branches, came home and cut this off, and then takes clay, rolls it out with a rolling pin, and then forms it all around the tree trunk, and so forth. And lets it dry, and then cuts it apart, puts it back together, and then decorates it. And here's the top, here's the spout, and here's the handle. And this is a piece I brought, another piece like this into the Smithsonian's Renwick Gallery. So that allowed me to touch it and try it. And yes, it does work. And it doesn't drip. You know how important that is. Native American. This artist distinguishes himself from Maria Martinez, which many of you know, by carving these grooves in very deep. Most Native Americans, the pattern is much more on the surface, and this young man wanted to break away from that tradition, so he took this theme of thunder, clouds, lightning, and rain to create this beautiful vase. And as you know, the shinier surfaces are achieved by taking stones and rubbing on the clay. But he has some areas that are shiny and some that are matte. Kari Lanu from Connecticut, she's not in this show, she's been in many, many shows in the United States and many of the Crafts America shows. She traveled around the world and she fell in love with gardens all over the world. Walled gardens, gardens that had a wall so that you could look in or see, Japan, England, wherever. And so she takes these reeds, rattan reeds, and sometimes she dyes them black, like here. So she takes all of what you see here, every one of these reeds, she lays them out on the floor, so they might be like this. And in the middle are the black ones. And she starts to weave all of these very complex patterns. So she didn't weave this separately and this separately, and then stick them down inside a hat. Like, so this is integral, one whole piece, woven together to come out in one unit, as opposed to, it'd be much easier to weave three of them and stick them down inside each other and call it a day. But she's got this fantastic artistic mind and a mind for engineering to come up so that that results in that way. This young lady suffered from a light deprivation, so she found that working with quilts often reflected light back onto her face. She was a mountain climber, climbed all over the world, and so mountains became her inspiration, as well as the different kind of trees that you find on the mountains. So you'll see here many different species of trees. as I said, this show was 1993, but in about 93 is, I had seen this quilt in a magazine, and I couldn't put it out of my mind. And I had to track it down to find it because it was so powerful to me. I didn't know why it was powerful, but it was. So I called up the artist to see whether, she got her letter, and then I called her up to see if she would give the piece, because she didn't answer the letter. And so there was this long pause on the other end of the telephone. And she says to me, I'm sorry that I couldn't answer you right away. That quilt means a lot to me. And so then she explained the story to me. So she made this quilt after her mother had died. And she was very close to her mother. And so she wanted to do a quilt that represented that loss. And so she started out here with the Starry Night. I thought it reminded me of Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night. Anyway, the symbols in here are she cries a lot of tears. She cries so many tears for the loss of her mother that those tears push out beyond the border of the quilt. And look how it comes down here and moves over here. And that is a very powerful visual device for translating. You just feel, if she had stopped the tears and just kept them within the quilt, they wouldn't have the power that they do. And then these stars represent her mother's transformation up into the upper heavens. So you see the stars moving up and up into this pinwheel and up higher, and of course the planets and the stars and the night and so forth. Well, when she was done telling me the story, I was in tears and I was speechless. And I was so embarrassed because I thought, here I'm asking this person to give this up, but I didn't know the story. And she said, let me think about it for 2 weeks. And so she thought about it and called me back, and she said, I can't think of a better place to honor my mother than to have it as part of this exhibition. And so it's a very powerful piece, and it's even more of a favorite of mine now. Cliff Lee, Taiwan. His parents dream of him coming to America to become a brain surgeon. He comes to the University of Pennsylvania, studies for 12 years, 13 years. He's getting close to the operating room where he starts to put his practice to profession. And he said, I just have to treat myself, and I've always wanted to take a ceramic class. He goes to the University of Pennsylvania and takes a ceramic class. He gets so excited, he says, I'm not going to be a brain surgeon. Now, his parents, in the meantime, jump out of the window. And anyway, so Cliff says to his parents, well, this is my passion, I have to do it. So he starts to do these porcelain bottles, and this is a two-piece part. This is separate. A peach vessel, and if you know porcelain, you know how delicate it is, how hard it is to work with. So he takes a scalpel. Did you notice I said the word scalpel? Brain surgery, scalpel. And he takes a scalpel and he carves away these beautiful relief carvings here and scrapes away and brings out the shape here. So he says to his mother and dad, you see, Mom and Dad, my whole education for surgery was not wasted. I use it in my clay work. He's in major museums all across the country, has been in many of the craft shows, including this craft show as well. Lives in rural Pennsylvania, Amish country. Now, I put it in the library at the White House. The library, up until 1902, was used as the laundry room in the White House, so pretty bad place. And then about 1935, it gets renovated to become the library, and there are about 1,200 books in there by famous American authors and so forth. But I thought this piece looked so beautiful in the center of the library on this table. It just seemed to match the sense of the room. All right, this is Peter Petrachko. Peter is in this exhibition, so you want to make sure you look at his work. And this is a really beautiful example of his work. And you should ask him how to explain it. If I tell you, I could be wrong. But he's here, so you can ask him. But what I liked about the piece was the stacking of the wood, the contours of the piece that go in and out and around. It's almost like a contour of a map. You're looking at undulations or undulations of water. And the pattern of it is quite extraordinary. The color of the piece is more like this, but the White House photographer got this color. They tone everything down there. Anyway, this is the map room. This is a room President Roosevelt used during World War II. This room was set up with very crude 2x4 tables in which all the maps of Europe were spread out. And that is where President Roosevelt went down there every day and he charted the progress of the war in the map room. And that's how this room got its name. So, and this is a Thomas Chippendale table here. And so I like this piece because it deals with the contour of the land, which is very much related to map making. And I just thought it looked really beautiful here. And this is a very old map from Thomas Jefferson's time of what the colonies looked like during the time of his presidency. So Peter's piece just seemed to be a natural fit. Another wood-turned bowl. Just look at this beautiful, simple form. But here, the artist is letting the voice of the wood grain do the talking. He doesn't give you a complicated shape, he gives you something very simple, and then he lets the grain of the wood, the history, the growing, the dry periods, the wet periods of a tree's rings of growth tell you the story. And it's very peaceful, it's very Zen-like. Whoa, Michael. Sam Malouf, who recently passed away, was one of the great woodworkers of America. And he had an extraordinary career, enormously influential on almost every woodworker you'll see in this show, can harken back to the days of Sam Malouf. He died just maybe 3 years ago at age about 98, and he kept making chairs and rockers. President Kennedy ordered one of Sam's rockers because of Kennedy's back problem. The Sam Malouf rocker really fit his painting, and these spindles that come down to form the back seat are all just beautifully contoured and just fit your body so elegantly. So you'll see a lot of people imitating Sam Malouf, but he had a very active and productive career. Ho Shun Leong, immigrants come to America, they offer us great visual treats in the world. He was trained as an architect, came to California and practiced, but he loved wood. So he takes hundreds of different species of wood and cuts them up into small pieces and glues them together. This is about 24 inches high, and it's quite beautiful. There's a little light up here, and right down here, you stick your finger underneath there, and you play around in there until you find the magic solution. You pull the trigger out and it springs open. And these are all little drawers in here. You can put your couplings in this one, gold coins here, and so each of these turns into a drawer. And this little light, when lit, shines down, and he, as being an architect, there are all little houses clinging to the sides of cliffs and buildings. And it's this kind of fantasy miniature world. And it's so dramatized when you see the light turned on. And then you reach back in there and you close it up. Quite a feat of engineering, craftsmanship, design, handling of wood, and quite remarkable. Dale Chihuly, I'm sure you all know Dale Chihuly. One of the great glassblowers who studied with Harvey Littleton, who you saw work of his earlier. And both Harvey Littleton and Dale Chihuly really jump-started the glass movement today, and you'll see wonderful glass here in the show today. So I put this piece, again, in a warm place, and this is called the Cross Hall. It's up on the second floor of the White House. Not many people get up there. And this is an English Chippendale furniture. This is an English partner's writing desk. So you have one partner here, and on the another partner there, and another partner over there. So you can have 8 sides, 4 partners, and you would sit and work there and pull out your own drawer. So it's a 1750s England. So I put this piece here just because I wanted to cool down that room. One day I was walking by it with Mrs. Clinton, and we were talking, and I said to her, what's your favorite piece in the collection? She said, actually this one is. And she bent over. Now, you all know what a megaphone is. You know, the cheerleaders with the megaphone? And they use megaphones for a reason, because it throws out the sound. So she said, she bent over this and looked down in there, and she said, "This is my favorite piece." And suddenly the words came back. It said, "This is my favorite piece." And I said, "Well, why?" She said, "Because it's the only time in my life that I've been quoted accurately." So that was the first drop. Well, I saw there's some drops of sense of humor. But anyway, she said, "This is the first time I've ever been quoted accurately." But, so that's the piece, and there you go.